AskReddit by Anthemus101. What is your favorite example of massive corporate failure? Lenovo shipping laptops loaded with the superfish malware. Tesla mass Brewster 2015-02-19 superfish need to know ? Equals 25 array to 4,133,877. Sony Rootkit DRM. Sears was practically built on catalog sales and shipping items to customers. They had the infrastructure in place yet somehow missed out on internet shopping. Sears had everything. They were the original everything store. You could even buy a house. Retail catalog of just about everything that could have moved to electronic form. Experience with mail order logistics. They owned Discover Card. They had a large stake in Prodigy, one of the first ISPs. They could have had an online store that consumers felt safe using their Discover Card at. They could have offered in-store returns on goods bought online. They fucking blew it. Probably BlackBerry. They're an interesting case study in a company being sniped off of what 10 years ago had been an undisputed market-leading position by failing to account for changing technology. Years ago, I listened to a podcast where they talked about the first time BlackBerry engineers got hold of an iPhone and opened it. They deemed they were several years behind replicating the iPhone and didn't think it was possible. Circuit City cutting costs by firing their most experienced salespeople. The chain was bankrupt in less than 2 years. I was there when it happened. We all just laughed and knew exactly what was coming. I worked for Kodak, Qualex, and I will never forget the meeting we had talking about 35mm film. A person said he's noticing an influx of people looking to print digital photos. This was a senior vice president of Kodak saying, and I quote, "This whole digital thing is just a fad, it will blow over soon." I think it's a toss-up between Xerox and Kodak for the worst corporate failure. Both companies were on the leading edge of the revolution, Xerox even more so with their work at Park, and somehow managed to fuck it up by being stupid. Southwest Airlines last Christmas. It was the biggest meltdown in aviation history according to the IATA, and that's a statistic no airline wants to have. George Lucas offered to sell his computer animation company to Disney for $8 million in the 1980s. Disney balked, so he sold it to Steve Jobs instead and it became Pixar. Speaking of George, his decision to get merchandising rights for Star Wars was genius. Tumblr. 2013 sold for $1.1 billion in cash to Yahoo. 2017 Verizon acquires Yahoo. 2018 bans porn. 2019 sold to WordPress for $3 million. That's a spicy meatball. Source: see update below. Edit to correct facts. Better source: https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/tumlr. Added in sales figures. Tumblr is a bit of a special case. It never had a remotely reasonable way to make money, just hope that someone else might magically find one someday. It's arguably a massive corporate failure from the very start, really. The entire Penn Central disaster. The railroad was massive but terribly managed and lasted less than 3 years before becoming the biggest bankruptcy in US history at the time. I'm not sure how Penn Central could have made it. My grandfather worked for the New Haven Railroad, which I believe became part of PC. He liked to point out that the federal government gave automakers the interstate highway system, but gave railroads nothing. That came home to roost. I don't know if this counts as failure, but Skype had a 10-15 year head start only for Zoom to swipe in during the pandemic. This one is so odd to me. For such long time everyone used Skype. I don't know how they dropped the ball so hard. Suddenly the panini comes around and boom, people are using everything but Skype. World War II was over. Germany was a bombed out smoking ruin. The victors saw that communism was taking hold in countries with collapsed economies, so they wanted to resurrect the economies of Europe. They were desperate to just get people working again. They'd try anything that had a ghost of a chance at working. The US essentially told Ford that they'd give them the Volkswagen work, the factory that made VWs. If Ford were to take over, just run this factory and make some cars, get people back to work, they could have it for free. Henry Ford II told his board of directors, "Gentlemen, what we're being offered here isn't worth a damn," and declined the offer. Wow. Never knew this. Yeah, that's a blunder. Adidas and Puma focusing on a sibling rivalry so much that they failed to notice when a relatively small newcomer called Nike overtook them to become number one in the world. IBM. They let Microsoft retain the rights to the PC operating system they put on the IBM PC. That's not their only mistake, alas. Yahoo was offered Google for $1 million, 3 times, and they turned them down. If they had bought it though, they only would have the search engine. All the other Google innovations would never have happened. We'd currently be living in an iPhone vs BlackBerry world. A few with different outcomes. Kendall Jenner stopping riots with a can of Pepsi. Tumblr banning porn. OnlyFans banning porn. https://time.com/6092947/onlyfans-sexual-content-ban/close bracket. Blockbuster not buying Netflix. You ever see the college humor dropout video about Tumblr? https://yahoo.be/ctuab1aqg0?simbq2xxfagqjeo. Universal's Dark Universe. In the rush to create a cinematic universe to rival Marvel, Universal was going to do a reboot of their classic monsters, Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, etc. Alex Kurtzman was going to be their Kevin Feige, overseeing the entire franchise. The first film was going to be The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise. They made the big announcement that Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man, Javier Bardem was going to be Frankenstein's monster, and Russell Crowe was going to be Dr. Jekyll. But what happened? Cruise took over control of The Mummy, turning it into just another vehicle for himself. With fond memories of the Brendan Fraser Mummy films, audiences stayed away, and The Mummy flopped, taking the entire Dark Universe with it. I can never forget when they accidentally released this, as the trailer makes me laugh every time. https://yahoo.be/krqzikjpohs?? feature shared. American car manufacturers in the 80s. I was buying my first family car and it was between a Ford Taurus wagon and a Toyota Camry wagon. The Ford sales guy said, "Yeah, the Japs have to learn they can't make cars that last 15 years," and then laughed. We got the Camry. No wonder the American car manufacturers all had to be bailed out. Meanwhile, that Camry is probably still going strong. M&M's declining to be the candy of choice for ET. I remember watching the movie in the theaters thinking, "Oh, Reese's Pieces, that's cute." Huge mistake. The metaverse. Every month or so I'm reminded it exists. Then I promptly forget about it again. Pepsi ran a lottery in the Philippines, but when there were more winners than expected they refused to pay out the cash prizes. There were actual riots. A few people died. No, it's not that there were more winners. It's that they had the lottery every night, announcing the numbers on TV. Prices changed every day, 500 pesos being the least and 1 million being the maximum. On the day of the 1 million pesos prize, They announced the wrong code on TV and made 600,000 people winner of 100,000 pesos. Paying this would have crippled Pepsi. So they settled to get every winner 500 pesos, the minimum prizes. Riot ensued. The Ford Pinto. Ford knew they had a problem, but they moved forward on the results of a cost-benefit analysis that showed it would cost more to fix the problem than to pay out lawsuits. The judgment in the first lawsuit blew their cost-benefit analysis out of the water because of the low ball number they used as the value of a human life. And the Ford Bronco II. It was estimated that 1 in every 500 Bronco IIs ever produced was involved in a fatal rollover crash. By 2001, Ford had paid out over $2.1 billion in damages, verdicts and settlements. But a Ford engineer had reported in the early 1990s that the Bronco II had a dangerously low stability index. In fact, Ford even cancelled the J-turn test during the Bronco II testing procedures for fear of killing one of their own employees. Nokia. They were not that big in the US, but they dominated the mobile phone market in most of the rest of the world at one point. When the first iPhone came out, they were very dismissive of it. We all know how that turned out. Even Android. With iOS they had Symbian but failed to upgrade to Android due to them being cocky. Kodak invented digital photography in 1975. Instead of capitalizing on it, they bought up small companies and focused on traditional film photography. General Electric. So many Jack Welch's silent destroying companies to make a quick buck for Wall Street. We could call Bain Capital Thanos because half the companies it acquires die and the other half are maimed. One of my favorite examples of massive corporate failure is the bankruptcy of Blockbuster, which failed to adapt to the digital revolution led by competitors like Netflix. The thing with Blockbuster is they actually were successfully competing with Netflix for a while. They created Blockbuster Online, allowing people to order DVDs over the internet, and then added this program where if you returned a DVD you rented online to their store, you could rent a new DVD for free. They gained a ton of subscribers. It was growing like crazy. And then billionaire investor Carl Icahn forced out their CEO, thought the whole online shit was incredibly unprofitable and not worth it, and installed a new CEO who basically killed it off. Womp womp.